This is TWiT.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by our friends at IT Pro TV, now called ACI Learning. 94% of CIOs and CISOs agree that attracting and retaining talent is increasingly critical. Invest in your workforce and keep their IT skills current with ACI Learning. Visit go.acilearning.com/TWiT. TWiT listeners can receive up to 65% off an IT Pro Enterprise Solution Plan after completing their form. Based on your team's size, you'll receive a properly quoted discount tailored to your needs. Apple Watches. You can't get one after Thursday. What?
If you're looking for a Christmas gift, right now is the time.
Technically,
Well, in online Thursday in Apple stores on basically after Christmas, and as long as supplies last, you will be able to buy them. This is all in the U.S. At other stores, but not Apple. Apple's not allowed to sell it, and this is all because of a ruling from a U.S. government patent body that has basically said. And said 6 months ago, and unless the Biden administration feels like there's a game of chicken going on here, right?
Days.
So they had 60 days in order to have this go into effect. The Biden administration can veto it if they want to, and also they're playing chicken here about like, are they going to pay them off? What are they going to do? But like, this is an order for Apple to stop selling any iPhones with blood oxygen sensors, and that means the current Apple Watches, Apple Watch
Ultra 2
and Apple
Series
Watch
9.
Ultra.
Yeah.
Are so the SE will still be there, yay! But otherwise, yeah, this is again, it feels like a game of chicken to me, but it's entirely possible that post Christmas, Apple will not be selling the Apple Watch in the U.S. for a little while.
Yeah,
at least those newer Apple Watches. Yeah.
Yeah. Those Apple Watches. Also, Apple can't import anymore into the country after the 25th. So Apple is deciding to be proactive while it tries to again play that game of chicken. But that means that anything that's already in the retail channel, that if Best Buy already has like a month long supply of these watches by the 25th.
6 months.
Exactly. The point is that like if someone tries to sell you a watch for like 8 times face value 3 days after Christmas, maybe hold off. And also maybe Apple will suddenly just get out of this checkbook, and as has been noted, they had a whole bunch of options to make this go away, one of which is to again hope that Biden will veto it. If he hasn't vetoed it by now, maybe this was designed to basically give the administration one hell of a nudge to say, hey, we're serious about.
I bet there are a few letters
the economy
going into Santa Brandon. You could sign that on Christmas Eve, Santa Brandon, and make everybody happy.
Yes.
Or is it Brandon Claus? I can never remember.
Yeah.
And of course, the other option is Apple could just turn off the blood oxygen monitor. This comes from a lawsuit by Masimo, which is a company that makes a lot of these devices. They make a scale, but they say that the blood oxygen sensor, they have the patent to that, and Apple never licensed it from them.
Yeah.
And so they sued. And they lost in court, but the ITC nevertheless put the ban up. And so up to either the ITC or the president, or to take it down, or Apple to take that capability out. They could do that.
Or they could just say, okay, guess what? We're going to give you. I'm sure that Masimo has offered them a licensing agreement, and Apple has said we're going to wait until every other option has been removed.
That's what it looks
including,
like. Yeah.
And it also bears mentioning that Masimo is not a patent troll. They are like a legitimate founder of this kind of technology.
Yeah, and for sure.
They had the one of the sources of this lawsuit was that they said that they were having talks with Apple about properly licensing this technology or what kind of partnership they wanted to have. And that their claim is that Apple not only took their technology, but they also hired away a lot of their key executives, including their basically top medical tech person. And I think there's a lot powered behind this.
And if I'm correct, it actually is worse than that. Is that Apple sued them first. So I think that the issue. I mean, there's a whole bunch of a series of unforced errors on Apple's side that got to this. We shouldn't feel too bad for Apple. They made a lot of mistakes here. So they I usually I'm on the Apple defense side, but this one was just not a good idea on their end. So the first thing is that it appears that they had the meeting in 2013. Apple liked the technology, but really didn't feel like Masimo was a consumer faced company. It wasn't worth buying the whole thing and getting a hold of all the other things that they do. So buying the company didn't make sense for Apple. But then they did exactly what Andy said, hired a bunch of people. Like we can, in California, we can do that all the time. Like we just hire each other, hire other people. The problem is that what that brings is the potential of crossing over these patents. But it doesn't appear that, at least what I've read so far, it appears that what opened this can of worms was that Massimo created a watch. And the watch, and so they were promoting this watch, and Apple sued them for infringement, which then they sued Apple for infringement, and then the whole thing, came apart. So anyway, so I think that was the issue. Yeah. So there's the watch that they created, and it looked a lot like the Apple Watch, and so Apple sued them and opened up this can of worms, I believe, in 2018 or 19. And then now Apple's paying the price for it. So it's a lot of Apple doesn't lose these very often. Like with a Live Core, they lost. Apple ended up losing, but they had invalidated the patents by the time they lost. Like the patents were gone by the time they got there. And I think that they thought they could do the same thing again, and they didn't. And so it is but it's a solid company. Definitely not. This is a company that thought of this a long time ago, that's been working on it, that works on a lot of other products. This is definitely not one of those cases of someone just going after Apple. And Apple, I believe, if I remember what I read there, struck first. Like they're the ones that if they had left things well alone, I think Massimo, it sounds like, was happy to just build the watch. But Apple, picked a fight. And so anyway, which Apple does. I mean, Apple defends what it considers its patents. And so anyway, so I think that, and Apple just won't. Massimo, I think, has said a couple times that they're willing to do a deal. Like they're not.
Oh, so they are. See, that was one question I had: is are they willing to license it?
Yeah. They've said that they're willing to license it.
Okay,
Apple.
So this is just Apple
it.
being curmudgeonly.
Yeah, I mean, they're the problem is with Apple is if you open up this door, how many other doors open connected to these similar things? Yeah. And so Apple, they're going to make sure that everyone knows it's really painful, and you got to be really sure you want to do this with a big company. And so I think that's part of the calculation here. The other thing is that we're at the downside of the rush for the watch. They're probably going to flush the market, so they can't sell them. But of course, by announcing this a couple days before Christmas, even I was thinking about getting one for my daughter. Hopefully, she doesn't listen to the show. Now I'm like, I got to get one really quickly here. So
but she's a kid. You could get her an SE. You don't have to get her the full.
Right, exactly. But anyway, the point is, it had me thinking about it. And so in the same way, the Apple will probably get a rush of orders they weren't going to get anyway. They'll flush the entire market, the Best Buy, Walmart market or whatever, so that they have 3 months supply or 6 months supply or whatever. And they're probably not going to lose that much from it. So they probably have a couple months, probably 3 to 6 months of buffer to continue to fiddle with this until they have to capitulate, and I don't know if they will.
Also paying Massimo off means that basically taking a couple points off of the profitability of every single watch that they make into the horizon. So
yeah, I'm sure they're making the calculation like this is how hard they knew that this deadline was coming. I'm sure the Biden administration told them in the first week whether they were going to do something about it, or they have, and so the thing is but it is interesting that Tim Cook wasn't able to cast his spell that he has cast effectively many times.
They won this a while ago, because one of the few things that Samsung won against Apple in their suit was a similar ruling, and the Obama administration stepped in and said, okay, we're going to veto this, largely because of, I think Apple made an effect on the economy sort of argument that, hey, if we stop making, here's how much money this puts into the economy with app stores and everything else. And that was kind of an easy thing to go, but this is an accessory. This is not like it was. I think you're right. Like either they're going to veto this very quickly, or it was just never going to happen.
I think this is really consistent with Apple's behavior and all sorts of different legal and regulatory challenges that they've had in the last few years, right? Where we all talk about it and we say, oh, they should be preemptive and they should negotiate and all that. And you know what? They are very consistent. They don't. They don't. They wait till the last minute. They take it as far as they can in court. And we see it here too, where they like, and it may come back to hurt them, right? But it seems like they are very confident and they're willing to sweat out anybody else. And I'm still not convinced that when we're back for our next live episode that this isn't all resolved, right? Like it feels like a poker game is going on, a game of chicken perhaps, but I don't know. It is also like, this is super consistent with Apple. Like they will push it to the limit. They don't care how it makes them look. They just don't care because they think they can get the best result by doing that.
But it's not the best result for this one. It's the best result for all of them. For every small company or smaller company looking at doing a fight, know that we're going to take it all. I'm sure that the message to all of them is know that we're going to take this all the way to the end. Like we're not going to, somewhere. I mean, sometimes they and Apple does settle on other things. They'll settle if they've decided that there's nothing to be gained there, but they have to be careful because, every little company that has a meeting with Apple, could come back and say, well, you did something like, and this is why companies, by the way, if you send your script into Hollywood, they'll send it right back to you. If you don't, it's like
unopened. Yeah.
This is it. Yeah. Like they don't want you to and a lot of companies don't want you to tell them your ideas or give them any data because they're afraid you're going to sue them. Say, well, we had a meeting.
I have a standard boilerplate that I send out to people who suggest ideas for podcasts. Because I don't want to hear your idea for a podcast in case I'm already planning it.
Exactly.
Bloomberg says, Mark Gurman says, Apple's racing to tweak the software and plan to submit a workaround to the customs agency, to the ITC, and maybe get the ITC to overturn their ban. He's writing, engineers at the company are racing. And I tell you what, a week before Christmas, that's a big deal. Racing to make changes to algorithms on the device that measure a user's blood oxygen level, a feature Massimo has argued infringes its patents. They're adjusting, so they're not going to take it out. They're adjusting how the technology determines oxygen saturation and presents the data to customers. They're hoping that the ITC will say, oh yeah, that's no longer infringing. It's a high-stakes engineering effort unlike any Apple has undertaken before.
Yeah. Well, because it's a tightrope walk. They can't. It's just as bad to just introduce a patch that simply turns off those features until this has been resolved. Because how many people have bought these watches
for that
Apple's
reason?
Promise that here's a feature that's included. That's an instant class action suit. But there are ways that it's not as though there's a thumbs up, thumbs down to patent infringement. It's like here is exactly what is the idea of measuring blood oxygen saturation levels is not necessarily patentable in and of itself. It's even not just by shining light under the skin that's patentable. It's the specific method that they've used. So if Apple said that, what if we change the wavelength to this? What if we change the sample rate to this?
Massimo says the hardware needs to change.
Yeah.
They say a software fix will be an insufficient remedy.
And this is the same fight that Apple's going to have with glucose because, there's a lot of, they're working on it. I mean, they're trying to figure out a non-invasive way of, no one's figured that. I mean, but they have all these companies that are measuring glucose right now. And so the question is, does anyone have those patents as well? And because glucose will be much bigger than oxygen levels is one thing. Glucose will change how people eat. Like it will literally be a night and day change. It'll do as much damage to the food business as Atkins did. So because suddenly they'll see real-time data. And so I think Apple's definitely working down that path, but they're going to have the same problems because a lot of people are trying to crack the same code. And that usually means there's a lot of patents laying around related to that.
Yeah. And a lot of patent trolls probably patenting periphery.
Well, it's not just that. It's so I've worked in a couple companies that are consulted for a couple companies, and what you're instructed to do a lot of times in these big companies is, hey, if you're standing in a field and you don't see anyone around you, you should call our lawyers. If you're working on something and it's really like, hey, I can't find anything on the internet about what you're working on, or I can't do this, you should you should at least have an interview with somebody about what you're doing, and then we'll decide whether it's, and you'll say, I don't think it's patentable. They're like, yeah, it is. That's patentable.
It's so interesting to see how people's attitude towards this or toward Beeper Mini. If you're an Apple fan, it's the other guys at fault. And then there's a whole bunch of people on Reddit who hate Apple, unreasonably, and who are going, get them Beeper Mini, or probably get them Massimo. It's really interesting how it breaks down.
As you know, I'm usually defend Apple on these things. This was not necessary. I think they made a whole series of errors.
But you make a good point that they have to be really protective because this could get into
it opens up a can of worms.
Exactly.
I understand the thought process, but there's a lot of places. There are 3 or 4 key places here that they could have done something different, and it didn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that this is well within the calculation that they're making.